Sensationally silver, because you are.
Hi, I'm Robin Norwood, author of the international bestseller, Women Who Love Too Much. And I'm inviting you to join me in conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who demonstrate that sensationally silver is truly a state of mind. This mindset encompasses well-deserved pride in who and what we are today, rich in years and experience, in strength and hope and wisdom and fortitude and dignity. Come celebrate with us, because we all are truly sensationally silver. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sensationally Silver, Conversations with Extraordinary, Ordinary Persons of Age. I do have an extraordinary person today, Dr. David Cumes, who there's a very interesting dimension to his being a physician. For one thing, he's about my age. We're going to talk about his age in a moment, and he's still practicing. He's still a physician and a surgeon, but he's also a shaman. So what an interesting combination. Welcome, David.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's really great to be with you.
I'm delighted. I can't wait to ask you all my questions. So my first question is, how old are you?
I'm going to be 80 in August.
80 in August. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you definitely qualify because all my guests must be 60 or over.
Okay.
We both qualify.
Okay.
How old do you feel, Dave?
I feel more like 65, quite honestly.
Okay.
You know, I've been doing yoga for over 30 years. So it's really, I think, made a big difference. You know, it's been shown to, increase the length of your telomeres and sort of decrease your chronological age. So I think that my yoga practice has helped me. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And have you ever lied about your age?
I haven't lied about it, but I remember the times I would not ask for the senior discount at the at the supermarket, you know.
It's one of the few benefits of getting older and older and older. We get those discounts. I love
Yeah.
what for you is the most challenging thing about being a person of age?
I would say the most challenging thing is the work that I do because I sort of have to live in two worlds. I'm not normal, so a lot of the audience won't believe in this, but I have a lot of tricksters around me that interfere with what I try to do, and that makes it challenging. I've got like a 24/7 job in a way. I'm, both in my practice, I've got my alternative practice with, the Sangoma work. And if anything, the Sangoma work is more taxing, which is interesting, Just like the initiation was almost as difficult as medicine to get through because it's not a left brain thing that you can control as a doctor, it's more of a right brain thing, which was hard for me.
To surrender to whatever that process is, the unfolding mystery. Yeah.
Hmm.
So say that word again. I'm not familiar with that word.
Sangoma is a Zulu word for a shaman. It's, a better word probably was Inyanga, would be a diviner. Sangoma really, in the old tradition, means getting possessed by spirits and then channeling spirits. It's more than just channeling. The spirit takes over your body, and my ancestors didn't want that to happen to me. They were happy with me channeling, but not somebody taking over my body. So although people are more familiar with the word Sangoma in South Africa, I would really be in Nyanga, which is more of a medicine man in a diviner using plant medicines, dreams, and that sort of thing.
And which do you regard yourself as, or is it both?
I'm much more of an Nyanga, yeah, but I just use Sangoma because nobody knows what Nyanga means. They're more familiar with the term Sangoma, yeah. But they
Okay.
overlap now, so that they're very similar. In the old days, though, Sangoma would be classically the one who got possessed. But Sangomas used bones and divination, and Youngers get possessed. So there's a lot of overlap between the two.
I can imagine that people who are listening or watching are thinking, get possessed. That sounds pretty dark.
Well, the first time I saw it, it was really quite, I wouldn't say frightening, but very fascinating when a woman went into, got possessed. And basically, I was seeing, you're probably going to ask me this question. I was trying to find out whether I should really get initiated or not, because I had lots of messages that I needed to get initiated. And this woman became possessed just spontaneously. I was actually talking to her husband, and she came into this year type of thing and just read me the riot act, but she wasn't in her body. When later on, when I talked to her and she was not possessed, she was a completely different person, different voice, different persona, different facial expression. And it was quite remarkable. It happened a lot, but never happened to me during my initiation. I channeled, but never got possessed. Didn't let the spirit take me over. I didn't want to relinquish my free will to any spirit, no matter how enlightened.
Oh, and that's what you were saying your ancestors were guarding you against. Don't.
Yeah, they said not to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, were there some hints along the way that this was going to be your path? Did it open suddenly? How did that come about? I know you said you had messages coming through.
Yeah, it was very slow. When I went to the Bushmen in the Kalahari, I was sort of having an existential crisis in about 1987. And I spent a month with the Bushmen, most of it on my own. They're amazing people, incredibly spiritually oriented. They're the original first people. And that sort of woken me up in terms of that, and also my yoga practice changed my way of thinking. But then I would be taking these trips back to South Africa and other places, but especially South Africa. And the name of my little group was called Inward Bound. And I would always check in with Sangomas before the trip just to see how my life was going. And invariably, at least half a dozen of them said, yes, your trip's going to be fine. Your life's not so good. Your marriage isn't so good. I mean, they read everything. But the ancestors are calling you to do this work, our work, dreams, divination, medicinal plants. And I would have loved to have done it, but I thought I didn't have the aptitude. But it happened so often and so frequently, and sometimes they're very specific, like my favorite uncle, who was on my mother's side, was trying to help me together with my grandfather on my mother's side, who I never actually knew. And they were the instigators, which is the way things often happen. And they came through to these Sangomas and said, no, tell him this is what he has to do. I've been a black person in a previous life, so it's not foreign to me. And my teacher said to me, it's not about race or color or anything. If you're called, you're called. And she told me when she got possessed, your bad headaches will not go away until you listen. I was getting migraines like every month, and that's what they call twice a sickness. The ancestor sickness. They make you sick to give you, make you pay attention. She also said as soon as you initiate, your headaches will go away, and they did. But it took me a long time. I wasn't convinced that I could do it, although I would have loved to have done it.
So it was an attractive thing to you. It wasn't something that you didn't want to be able to.
Oh, I was fascinated by these people. My first reading was in Zimbabwe, where the guy told me more about my life than my mother would have known. It was unbelievable. And these guys can't read or write, and the Bushmen are very similar. And the interesting thing is, when I was with the Bushmen, one of them came and gave me a set of divination bones. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. They were probably his own divination bones. And only, some years ago, I remembered it because this is 87. I went and I dragged them out, and now I've made that into my travel set because I don't want in case I get confiscated when I travel. So they seem to have known something about me then as well that I didn't know about myself. They didn't say anything, but before I left, he gave me this divination set. Yeah.
Hmm. And I don't imagine that training to become a physician is great training for this. I mean, it seems it would lead you in quite an opposite direction, very practical, very pragmatic, as you said, very left brain. So,
Correct.
how does that blend in your life today?
Well, in the initiation, I kind of have to leave my left brain at the door of the yurt. It's called an ndumba. It's like a little hut. And that was easier than going through all the rituals. But having done that, I live in two worlds, so I'm still very left-brained in terms of my work. I classically do my surgical work, but now more and more people are coming to me with other complaints that I often see in my office that have medical complaints like breast cancer, something outside of my field. But I can go online, I can look at the x-rays, I can look at their blood work. I've got somebody today I'm doing phone bones on who's similar to that. And then they might ask me, hey, is there something else you want to tell me? And then I'll arrange for, a session with them. So I would say about 2 or 3% of my patients I see in the office come for divinations and for treatment. And I'm getting referrals now from people who have got other diseases, and they don't, that I know enough to know that medicine is magical, but sometimes they don't know what to do. Like if you've got breast cancer, should I really take tamoxifen or get radiation therapy or something like that? And in which case the ancestors often know. I've got a surgical professor who's actually a guide to me. So I don't know if he's on board, but the bones often speak to the patient's medical condition and tell them they're going to be fine often. You're going to be okay, even though they're worried they've been given a bad prognosis by the doctor or the oncologist. So that the two work really well together because both of them are magical, the African method and modern medicine.
Sometimes in that realm of folks who are, for want of a better phrase, kind of woo-woo, some of the traditional kinds of medicine, that Western medicine, are kind of looked down on, and then the alternative medicine is sort of raised up as better than, but it's all divinely inspired. I mean, all of it comes from something.
Yeah, yeah, it all comes from source,
Yeah, from source.
and we are all made in the image of the divine. So, we can download whatever we need to do for our own, whatever our destiny is. So yes, it is divinely inspired. And, if you find who you truly are, I guess who I'm truly supposed to be, my medicine is more a tool to get me to this thing. And I remember once going to an old Sangoma in the bush, and he said, you're not putting your ancestors in your work first. You must put them before your medicine. That's been very difficult, because, you've got to have a full-time sort of medical. You can't be half-time in medicine. But basically, my destiny has changed now. I'm much more focused on the Sangoma paradigm than anything else. But that if you look at it, there are three paradigms of medicine. There's, allopathic, very cause and effect, sort of Cartesian, Newtonian. And then there's complementary and alternative, which is all well and good. That's acupuncture and homeopathy and all those things. But this is a different kind of medicine. It's what you would call medicine not localized in space and time. So what we are connecting with is the spirit world and the field who download information that's much broader in their perspective than in ours. They can see a bigger picture. They have access to our karmic life book. They know who we're supposed to be. Because of free will, they can't tell us who we are, but they can kind of help nudge us in the right direction, but only if we agree to let them. But that's basically a medical intuitive. You call up some medical intuitive and they'll give you a diagnosis on the phone, even though they don't know anything about you. So there's the diagnostic and then there's the therapeutic. The diagnostic comes through spirit. I couldn't be able to divine without my ancestor, who's a black woman, who was a Sangoma in her previous life, is now doing work through me. But without her, I can't, the bones would not go, they're thrown in a non-random readable fashion. And then the treatment is also not localized in space and time. So that, there have been studies done by the CIA and by Stanford that show remote viewing is real, that you can do diagnosis, by sending somebody somewhere. But we also now have a lot of studies showing that remote healing works. If you compare two groups of patients who, one of them are healed from a distance, not necessarily by sangomas, but anybody who's a good healer. And the placebo is discounted because they don't know they're being healed. The results are so much better than they were with just conventional allopathic medicine. So that's what we mean by, medicine not localized in space and time.
Would you wish that there was some kind of training that incorporated or at least allowed room for this kind of approach to healing, to diagnosing and healing?
I think now more and more medical intuitives are being recognized, not necessarily by the medical profession, but by the public. There are many people who will go to psychics or, maybe even to a healer and get the kind of medicine that I'm talking about. But the medical profession is still pretty rigid. I once did a survey for the hospital. We divided it into three groups. So, like I said, the allopathic medicine, the alternative and complementary medicine, and then medicine not localized in space and time. Everybody was okay with the allopathic and the alternative, but not so much with the other. A lot of them thought it was witchcraft.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean,
Yeah. Hmm.
it does have that tone to it that it's,
Uh,
I mean, we say magic and it's positive, we say witchcraft and it's negative, but it's all something beyond our personality's control. Would you?
Correct, yeah. And both work very well. People who think witchcraft doesn't work are mistaken. It really does work, because anybody who's working with dark forces from the other side can neutralize the good stuff you're trying to do.
What is that? I just had it in my mind. This is what happens when you get older. It's
Uh,
like I need help with the nouns. Where you expect a certain result, I'm sure that that gets bandied about amongst
You
the
mean a
people.
placebo or not?
Uh,
Yeah, or not, the opposite of placebo is nocebo, where is the power of belief to hurt, harm, or even kill you, which is what witches will use. The expectation is a big thing, but that's more to do with hope, trust, surrender, which will have to do with placebo. They're all connected.
do you have kind of a, well, you probably have lots of them. I want to invite you to tell us a story about somebody who had a condition. These kinds of things came into the picture and how it turned out. Can you tell us a?
Yeah, I'll tell you one because it's always worrying as a doctor because there are bones that say you're going to be okay. There's also a bone that says you're not going to be okay. There's even a bone that points to death, but I'll never tell anybody about that because you'd never want to give them a nocebo effect. But I've had a number of instances of people who've come up to me years later that have been told that they had no chance, pancreatic cancer, one woman had uterine cancer, and the doctors were wrong and they did fine. And I think the amazing thing about when you do the divination is the power of belief. When you go to somebody you respect and they say, hey, you're going to be fine. It's a lot like the devout Christians who go to Lourdes to get cured. They have complete belief they're going to be fine, and they are. I mean, a lot of them are. A lot of them have had spontaneous remissions of terrible diseases that defied medicine. But probably the best story, if we've got time, is actually a doctor's wife who had a short bowel syndrome. She'd had surgery and she had a stoma with a bag, and she'd been to the Mayo Clinic and she had a very little small bowel. So the concern was if they made a pouch and made a continent like she'd be able to have bowel movements, she might be having incessant diarrhea all the time, because it will all just be water coming out. And Mayo Clinic said, no, we can do it. And there's a good chance you'll be successful. And she came to ask me, and the bone said, yes, you're going to be fine. And because she shopped where I shop, I would bump into her every now and then after the surgery, and she looked terrible. Every time I saw her, she didn't look well. She was having numerous bowel movements. I was, oh my goodness, you know, I screwed up. The bones told me wrong. And then about 9 months later, I bumped into her and she was fine. So it doesn't always happen immediately, but in the long term, it happened, and she was doing great.
Okay. Do you have
Mm.
another story? I love these stories.
Well, I'll tell you another one because I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't believe in any of this stuff. Is that I've got well, you've spoken to Adrian, I know through Adrian is a very good dreamer. She dreams for me. And Mary Ellen Kelly, who left the planet, who she and I had a spiritual relationship until she died. And she, after we were friends before, and after I initiated, she started to channel. She was a Celt, so she started to channel all this information that enhanced all the stuff I'm telling you about. And what happened, I had a friend who was a doctor that was a kindred spirit, and we used to meet once a year or so. And when he came back from Bolivia, he was like a Schweitzer kind of a guy. He was a doctor delivering his medicine to the Indians in the Amazon. And he was always great. And I started my healing center in South Africa. We had a lot to talk about. And then one day he called up and he said, "Hey, it's Lou here." And I said, "Great, why don't we go and have lunch?" And he said, "Dave, things have changed. I've got inoperable liver cancer. I've decided I'm not going to have a liver transplant. I'm just going to let it go." So I said, "Is there anything I can do? Would you like to have a divination?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd like that." And, we did a divination. It said, "No, you're ready. You're fine. You've done everything you're supposed to do." Everything was lined up really well for him. And he said, "Can I do anything for you?" So I said, "You can, because there are a lot of people that do not believe in this stuff. I mean, if people have had near-death experiences, they won't have any trouble believing in it." I said, "Maybe we could design an experiment where you could come to somebody, and you can't come to me because no one will say, believe me. Come to one of these people who are good dreamers. Mary Ellen is good and Adrian is good, but Mary Ellen doesn't know you. So why don't you come to Adrian? She'll recognize you if you come through. But you've got to come through with a message that otherwise you just visit, they'll say, oh, she just showed up." And he said, "I've got these meditation beads. I'm going to come with my meditation beads around my neck." So Adrian and I always talk dreams before we do patients. And she came into the office one day. It was about 6 weeks. I never said a word to her. It was about a month after he died. And she said, "I had a dream about Lunetza." And I didn't say anything. Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned the name. I had a dream about Lou. And you know, I said, "But what happened?" She said, "Well, it was very interesting. He came in a sepia-like color, in short pants and flip-flops and a poncho, because he's in the Amazon, and that was it." And now, depending on the skill of the person who's dead and the skill or the receptivity of the recipient, who's Adrian, who's very good, I knew he couldn't come through with all the information. And I didn't ask her about the beads. I just let it go. So I thought, well, that's great. He tried his best, but it didn't work. And then one morning, about 3, 4 weeks later, I get a call from Mary Ellen, 6 o'clock in the morning. And she says to me, "Dave, do you know a guy called Lou Netzer?" And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, he came to me in a dream last night. And I said, how did it look like? And same as Adrian, he came in a sepia-like color, so that's unusual for both of them. And he had shorts and a poncho on, and he had these beads around his neck. And he said 3 times, "Tell Dave these are not just beads. Tell Dave these are not just beads." And a third time. And then he left. She didn't know who he was. And then in the morning, she went to the driveway. She picked up a newspaper, and there was a full-page article of Lunetza with these 2 people who'd taken over was called the Reno Bucky project in Bolivia. And it was like an obituary to him, recognizing the work that he'd done. And now the 2 friends of his who were going to take it over. And there was this whole article about Lunetza. So he planned it, so that she knew it was him. And then she said, "A guy called Lunetza." So that's a story I tell a lot, because I'm sure there are going to be some people in your audience who think this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Yeah.
And you know what? People feel that way because it is a feeling. It's really a value.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to convince a person who doesn't.
Yeah.
I wrote a third book that was very woo-woo, and when I was writing it, I would sometimes it would come up with people, and they'd say, "Oh, I don't believe in that stuff," but immediately every single person would tell me a story that went way beyond our ordinary experience of life, some kind of thing like those dreams, something that you is inexplicable unless you yield and say those barriers really don't exist. And I mean, it happens so consistently that everyone had a wonderful, wonderful story that broke their own rule, but they would be adamant, oh, I don't believe that stuff. And, you know, it didn't matter who they were. We all have those experiences, some of us more than others. I studied with Barbara Brennan, and she was an amazing, amazing healer. And she said, anybody can do this. It's like practicing the piano. You just have to practice. But there are Van Cliburns in the world, people who are born with a terrific gift. But everybody can do the scales and use those fingers and practice if it's important to them. And I think this dimension, you know, as you're saying, Dave, we're opening in general, we're opening to this more. There's more and more, I guess what other word is there? There's more proof, there's more evidence that all sorts of things go on that don't fit into that Newtonian description of what life is and what its limits are. And I think maybe it's threatening. Sometimes people don't want to know about something that is not as controllable as what we think our life is. I don't think life's that controllable myself. Mine hasn't been, but it's been full of wonderful surprises. Some not so wonderful, but they've all turned out well. So I'm really grateful to you for talking about this today, because this is something, as we get older and we're approaching the end of this lifetime, it seems to me that it's very valuable to not close down in fear, but to open up with that hope and with that at least willingness to see something beyond maybe a kind of a strict belief system that we were raised with that might not be what we would choose to believe today, to open to more and welcome it and see the love in it. I think that's, oh my goodness, I'm tearing up. That there's a loving energy that is reaching us, and we just have to be a little bit willing and let it in. Yeah, does that make sense?
Oh, perfect sense. And it's a credit to your interviews, because obviously you make people comfortable enough to share these things. So it's good. But you know, you're absolutely right. If you don't believe in it, you will not see it. You cannot see it if you're close to it. You know, Einstein said there are two ways to live your life. One is that there isn't a miracle, and one is that there is a miracle. Life is a miracle. And it's not just about what we can see. You know, there's something far beyond the senses that we can't see. So I agree with you completely. And yes, you're right. People are opening up more and more to it. And, you know, but it's interesting. Dean Radin, who's the physicist for the noetic sciences, he says still only 1% of the scientific world believe in what we're saying, which is kind of astonishing, you know.
1%.
1%, yeah.
So probably that 1% has had overwhelming evidence that
I
there's
think
something
so.
else going on,
Yeah.
because that training that you've had and so many people in that scientific realm have had says, no, no, don't go there. Don't go there. I have a dear friend who taught science at the high school level. And she's now, she does the bowls, the
Crystal balls.
yes. And it's such a stretch for her. But like yourself, Dave, because I know this about you, that you have taught classes in adult education here about, what is it, spirituality around the world. What are the titles?
You know, it's really interesting thing is there's three genres of spirits that connected to both me and Mary Ellen: African, Kabbalistic, and Celtic or Druid. And what they're interested in now, because we're in so much trouble, are universals. So whatever I'm teaching is, you know, doesn't come from me, it comes from them. And also, of course, I fill in the gaps. But in reality, they don't want to put a stamp of Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or anything on it because that puts people off. So they're universal truths across the spectrum. I just gave a talk on death. I'm going to be giving one about energy systems soon. Talks on destiny, karma, all those things, but not with any stamp on them. Just universal truths that everybody can really hold on to, especially now because we're really in a mess at the moment.
I'm assuming that because I used to teach for adult education, and when I heard that you had taught the kinds of courses you were teaching, I thought that isn't the kind of thing they usually um, offer. But I'm assuming, and you can tell me if I'm incorrect, that medical degree of yours opens some doors to this
Absolutely.
other realm. Yeah, it gives you credibility, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons they wanted me to do this stuff because there are lots of, there are lots of white people who've become initiated in South Africa. I don't think there are a lot of surgeons who've become initiated. I know there have been some physicians and so on, but those are few and far between. So, when I've talked to people, I've even given grand rounds once to people. And, the audience was peppered at the hospital, local hospital was peppered with people obviously wanted to listen to me. But one guy got absolutely furious and he got up, how dare you come here and talk this nonsense. And actually he helped me because the audience got really annoyed with him. It was a good gauge. But, the medical profession, it is fear. It's exactly what you said. They don't want to go outside of their paradigm. A lot of them will accept it, but they won't. They might be doing it on the side, but they won't admit to it, because that might discredit them. And I was told by a surgeon, no, sorry, a colleague, Dave, don't do this. Don't come out of the closet because it'll destroy your practice. And it didn't. I'm good at both jobs.
I haven't been to your office, but I understand that when people come in, there's lots of evidence of this other part of your life. You don't hide it at all. It's right there.
No, not at all. Yeah. But they see it more in the African context. They'll see stuff there that's African. They'll see maybe books there, but it's still very, it doesn't look like a normal office, but it's very unusual because Adrian is an amazing person to have. She's just such a loving person. You kind of got emotional when it came to love. But the one teaching about the ancestors, there's only one truth, and that's at the end of the day, that's love, and we'll be accountable for that.
Oh, that's a
Mm.
that's a beautiful thought to end
Mm.
with. In a way, we're not quite finished. I don't want to quite let you go yet.
Okay.
And I really hope you'll come back again.
Oh, no, I'd be
It's-
happy to. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
that would be
yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
Yeah, we have more things to talk about. I want to ask you what in your life right now is the most exciting thing that's going on for you?
The most exciting thing that's going on for me, that's tough because I've got a problem with somebody at the moment, and I think it's a trickster story. So that's sort of overtaken a lot of my energy and my excitement. But I'm always attracted to go back to my roots to Africa. So maybe the most exciting thing is what I wanted to do in May, but I couldn't do it because of what's going on now. I've always wanted to climb this mountain. It's not a technical climb. It's called the Brandberg. It's in Namibia. And I've always had this affinity for the Bushmen because that's where I started, the first people. And the Brandberg is kind of, I think it's like Ayers Rock in Australia. There are hardly any Bushmen around there now, but there must be 60,000 Bushman rock paintings there. So I'm sure there's a lot of energy there that I can connect with. And I want to do it next year when it's not too hot, preferably if it's rained a bit because it doesn't rain there. It's in the middle of the desert. And, it's too hot now because it's summer there. So May is maybe May next year, I'll be looking forward to doing that. Yeah.
That does sound like a
Yeah.
big challenge.
Yes, my swan song before I check out to the other side. Yeah.
Do you get intimations about your own passing? Do you have
No,
that?
no.
No.
I've made some requests about when I want to go, but that I'm not in control of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hope they listen. Yeah. I don't
So,
want to wait till I'm too old, when
yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
go on, at the top of my game. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all want to get out of here without too much suffering. It's just like, go when it's time to go.
Yeah.
So, Dave, this is mm, pretty serious stuff that we're talking about. We're talking about illness and healing and this hidden side of life and all that. Where do you find the humor in your life? Where are the laughs? Where's the giggles?
I think you've got to find humor even in the most ridiculous situations, like the politics and all the bad stuff that's going on. I try and find the humor with, where I can, but sometimes it can be hard. You have to. I work hard at keeping my equanimity. I either do yoga or hike almost every day, so that I kind of have my parasympathetic nervous system isn't overridden by my sympathetic flight or fight. So that, the problem with spiritual practice these days, it's more like stress busting. It's not really getting you to higher spiritual levels, but at least you're getting your vibration back to where you can appreciate humor. And, I try and look for funny movies because I don't know if you know, but Norman Cousin healed himself watching funny movies.
Yes.
So, because there's so much, all the movies out there are violent or they're about revenge or the politics is kind of, but it's very hard to find stuff these days, that's really enlightening and funny, really funny. Nothing better than a good belly laugh.
It's so true. I was at a party this weekend at my daughter's, and the laughter, I mean, there was just this shrieking
Oh,
laughter
yeah,
on and on and on.
yeah.
Many years ago, when I was up at the station, I had a woman on, Annette Goodhart was her name. And good name for what she did because she was a therapist, but she was a laughter therapist.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked her, I said, it's been my observation that it's easier for men to laugh with men and women to laugh with women. And she said, yes,
Oh,
that was very true. And this party, here were all the women over there just laughing so hard
oh,
because some of the humor was about men. It's like our
oh, yeah,
club and then them,
yeah.
because it's always a challenge to
Mm,
understand what we aren't. And but oh man, that such a healing thing to be able to
yeah.
laugh. So my
But,
last question for you today, Dave,
yeah.
what would you say to all the other persons of age who are watching, who are listening? What would you say to them?
I would say that, because our shelf life is expiring, I get ready for it because death is a good thing. If you're ready for it, it could be a happy thing. It's a relief. The people you leave behind will be grief-stricken, but you'll be relieved in a sense. So I think, know before you go would be the mantra, and try with all your strength get knowledge about the death process. We tend to put it off. People are frightened of it subconsciously. Many people fear death or have a morbid fear about death. And, nobody would go on a journey without doing a lot of research, like going to Siberia without really informing themselves. But we don't inform ourselves about what's going to happen. And if we did, we'd be very much better off and a lot happier for it.
I think sometimes people think if they pay attention to that topic, they're inviting it closer. So there's this, if I avoid it,
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not welcoming it. But you're
Yeah.
saying welcome it. Do welcome it.
Welcome it. Yeah.
Make
Welcome.
friends with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
done your work, your karmic work, it's going to be fine. So if you haven't, then make amends. Forgiveness is huge. Don't have any skeletons in the closet, unfinished business, release anybody from any promises that haven't been fulfilled, and be unattached, attend to needs and not wants, because attachments are going to hold you back.
Mhm.
Mm,
That's a beautiful message.
yeah.
Dave, thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
being
so
here
welcome. Thanks for
today.
coming me, and I'll be happy to come back.
Oh, good. Good,
Yeah.
good, good. And thanks to all of you who have been watching and listening. Come visit us again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver, because you are.